الله أكبر الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. وما منع الناس أن يؤمنوا إذ جاءهم الهدى إلا أن قالوا أبعث الله بشرا رسولا. قل لو كان في الأرض ملائكة يمشون مطمئنين لنزلنا من السماء ملكا رسولا. قل كفى بالله شهيدا بيني وبينكم إنه كان بعباده خبيرا بصيرا. ومن يهد الله فهو المهتد، ومن يضلل فلن تجد لهم أولياء من دونه. ونحشرهم يوم القيامة على وجوههم عميا وبكما وصما، مأواهم جهنم، كلما خبت زدناهم سعيرا. ذلك جزاؤهم بأنهم كفروا بآياتنا وقالوا أئذا كنا عظاما ورفاتا أئنا لمبعوثون خلقا جديدا. أولم يروا أن الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض قادر على أن يخلق مثلهم وجعل لهم أجلا لا ريب فيه فأبى الظالمون إلا كفورا. قل لو أنتم تملكون خزائن رحمة ربي إذا لأمسكتم خشية الإنفاق وكان الإنسان قتورا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ولقد آتينا موسى 9 آيات بينات فاسأل بني إسرائيل إذ جاءهم فقال له فرعون إني لأظنك يا موسى مسحورا قال لقد علمت ما أنزل هؤلاء إلا رب السماوات والأرض بصائر وإني لأظنك يا فرعون مثبورا فأراد أن يستفزهم من الأرض فأغرقناه ومن معه جميعا وقلنا لبني إسرائيل اسكنوا الأرض فإذا جاء وعد الآخرة جئنا بكم لفيفا وبالحق أنزلناه وبالحق نزل وما أرسلناك إلا مبشرا ونذيرا وقرآنا فرقناه عليك لتقرأه على الناس وقرآنا فرقناه لتقرأه على الناس على مكث ونزلناه تنزيلا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, we have a dua request. The son of Dr. Khalid, who lives in England, he's crossed paths with the virus and he's currently on a ventilator. He is the nephew of uncle over here. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him shifa. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to clear him out of the woods. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave him unharmed and unscathed. As a result of this, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him a full and complete recovery. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him and his family sabr and patience and ajr for their patience. And with that, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us, to protect ours, to protect our families, our loved ones, our friends, anyone we know who is going through a difficulty. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant all of them strength, sabr, and ajr for their sabr. Ameen. Jum'ah Mubarakah to you and yours. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, enable us, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us. Tomorrow, Salatul Jum'ah, the first khutbah will be at 1:45, led by myself. And the second one will be 2:45, and we will be welcoming Mufti Wasim Khan from IACC. Tomorrow, our old entrance, which is the newer entrance, our newer old entrance, will be made available. And inshallah, very soon we will be informed when we'll stop using the emergency exit. This was a little getting, we had to get used to using this. Now we're gonna have to get used to going back to the original entrance. So alhamdulillah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow our entire construction and expansion phase to reach completion with khair and barakah for our entire community and everyone who visits here at the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, after the sunnah and witr prayer, we will continue our discussion. Tonight we will be talking about the assassination of Uthman radiallahu anhu and his shahada and martyrdom. and what happened as a result of that. And this is setting up the stage for us to get into the story of Karbala before the month of Muharram is over. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmadu nusalli ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So tonight we are going to bring the discussion about the Khilafah of Uthman radiallahu anhu to the end. Now, as I mentioned, Uthman radiallahu anhu was the third Khalifa in Islam. His administration lasted for 12 years. The first half was a lot of growth, a lot of progress. Unfortunately, the second half, the second 6 years of his Khilafah was plagued with rebellions and uprisings against Uthman radiallahu anhu in the form of discrediting him, character assassination, a lot of rumors and accusations that were hurled against him. And it led up to his siege and eventually his assassination. Okay. Now, there are many reasons for how this grew up. Many people, Islam spread really fast. Many people's understanding of the religion was poor. Okay. There was a sense of resentment towards the minority rule, because now you have what? You have Byzantines, you have Persians, Sassanids under Arab rule, which are the minority. So you have that. A sense of tribalism also started to creep back in the form of jealousy towards Quraysh. So even amongst the Arab tribes, now Quraysh are being looked at in envy. And then there were personal vendettas and agendas that the conquered people had against causing discord amongst the government, amongst the administration. You know, when you think about the Sassanid Empire and how, you know, one ruler, the son would kill the dad, and same thing in the Byzantines, just for taking over. So, you know, they had this history. So to bring that into play under Uthman radiallahu anhu's rule. So the word started to spread that there was a rebellion that was uprising. And it was based out of Egypt, Basra, Kufa, and they all came to an agreement. About 4,000 rebels, okay? 1,000 from Kufa and Basra each, and 4,000 rebels from Egypt, okay? Now, who were these rebels? These were troops, okay? These were armed troops, garrisons, mercenaries who fought for the Islamic State, and they had their grievances. You know, some of them had actual grievances about, you know, about the way that their shares were distributed and whatnot. But it all became a reason to cause a commotion and an uproar. Now, what was their plan? Their plan was to take the matter directly to Uthman radiallahu anhu. Their plan was to depart from their areas in the Hajj season. Okay, so the month of Dhul Qa'dah, that's when people around, they start preparing and heading towards getting prepared to go for Hajj. So their plan was to start moving towards Medina during the Hajj season. And what would happen, people coming from the north, they would all stop in Medina, gather in Medina, and then all travel together to go for Hajj to Makkah, just like today. So their intention was, let's get to Medina and then everyone will leave for Hajj and we will stay behind. So this is what they did. Upon reaching Medina, all of the Hujjaj, when they started to leave in the month of Dhul Hajj, most of Medina was out, which left all of them, which made it very easy for them to take advantage of the emptiness of Medina. So in the month of Shawwal, okay, in the month of Shawwal, leading up to Dhul Hijjah, actually, the fitna, all of these rebels were on the outskirts of Medina, waiting to move in on Medina. Now, at some point before they got to Medina, Uthman radiallahu anhu was outside of Medina traveling. He had met with these group of rebels who expressed their grievances, and Uthman radiallahu anhu, he heard them out, and he made decisions in their favor, and Ali radiallahu anhu also ratified this. Ali radiallahu anhu was attested to this, and he was made witness to ratify these agreements and sign the documents or whatever it was between Uthman radiallahu anhu and all of these people. Okay, so once their disagreement and their grievances were addressed, the rebel leaders, the people who were behind this, they realized that our whole plan has failed. Like, what are we going to do now? Like, we were going to go and attack him with the intent, with, using the what? Using the excuse that we have grievances. And now he addressed those grievances. So now what do we do? So they came up with a plan, and this is the incident that changed the course of history forever. Okay? It is mentioned that the rebels, as they were going back, the group that was there from Egypt, as they were heading back, they saw a man in the distance riding a camel. And as soon as they saw him, he started to ride away really quickly, which aroused their suspicion. It's almost as if he was asking to be caught. Okay? And when they got to him, and got a hold of him, they discovered a letter that was written by Uthman radiallahu anhu with his stamp on it to the governor of Egypt, saying that when these guys come back, hang them, all of them. So when they saw this communication to the governor of Egypt, they came back. Okay, and what did Uthman radiallahu anhu instruct? Allegedly, that have this group killed, crucified, cut off their hands and legs, and hang them in public. So they came back to Medina. This is something that was done by one of the rebel leaders. Okay, it is mentioned that this was a letter that was forged. Okay, and now when they came back, Uthman radiallahu anhu denied having written this letter, denied having any knowledge of this. He told them to bring witnesses and even to accept an oath over the Quran for his innocence in this. But they weren't having it. So the first time that so in the beginning, when the rebels came, Uthman radiallahu anhu was able to go pray and move about and visit whoever he wanted. Okay, the first time that they approached, they didn't really cause much commotion because Uthman radiallahu anhu addressed their concerns. But this time they came back, they barred him from leaving his room, from leaving his house to go to the masjid. Now mind you, he was the Khalifa, so he wasn't just someone who was going to attend, he was going to lead. They barred him from leading. They barred him from prayers. They barred him from even leading Jumu'ah or attending Jumu'ah. The prayers were led by one of the leaders of the rebellion, and Uthman radiallahu anhu's character was openly assassinated in the khutbah in Masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now they demanded Uthman radiallahu anhu to resign, or we are going to kill you. And what did Uthman radiallahu anhu reply in return? I am not going to take off the garment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on me. Like, no, I'm not going to resign. Now, is this hard-headedness? Of course not. What was Uthman radiallahu anhu's wisdom behind his perseverance and him standing firm? Is that, hey, if I buckle now, that means any group can go and approach any Khalifa and threaten and force them to resign. No, threaten me of death. I'm not going to resign. This is not how it works. So to eliminate any pressures from rebellions in the future, he took a very strong stand and he said, no, I'm not going to back down. So Uthman radiallahu anhu, not on top of that, but he told the other companions he did not allow any of the other Sahaba to pick up arms to defend him. Okay, he did not want the blood of any Muslim spilled in Medina because of him. They're after me, so let me deal with it alone. Now Uthman radiallahu anhu was not allowed to leave his residence. He was barred from accessing water as well. And he was under house arrest for 40 days. Now, it kept on going on until Hajj was over. Now what did that mean? When Hajj is over, people are going to start coming back to Medina. So the rebels, they had to act fast. So what did they do? They tried to burn his house down with him in it. They tried to light his roof on fire. But they were prevented. Some companions, including Hassan ibn Ali radiallahu anhu, they were inside to defend him. Okay, and as I mentioned, throughout the entire ordeal, he told everyone to just back off and let him deal with the rebels. Now, only Uthman radiallahu anhu and his family were in the house. When everyone else left, okay, he opened the Quran and he started to recite. And he was fasting at the time as well. And the rebels, they busted the door down, they barged in, and they strangled him before he was struck by a sword. And in all the while, Uthman radiallahu anhu's hand was cut as well, and his wife, trying to protect her husband, her finger was also cut in this ordeal as well. Uthman radiallahu anhu died with the Quran in front of him, and blood from his hand spilled on the following ayah. Ayah number 137 of Surah Baqarah. That is, the famous picture of the Quran, the Mus'haf with his blood. فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If they believe the same way as you believe, then they have certainly found the right path. وَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ. If they turned away, the fact is that they are in deviance. فَسَيَكْفِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah will suffice for you against them. وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-knowing and the all-hearing, seeing. Uthman radiallahu anhu was 82 years old when this happened to him. This happened on the 18th of Dhul Hijjah in the year 35 after Salatul Asr. He was buried about 3 to 5 days later after Ali radiallahu anhu's insistence to the rebels for his body to be buried. 17 people were allowed to attend his janazah. The rebels further trashed his house, looted his family's belongings, and they also looted the Baytul Mal before they left. They invaded the entire city, they trashed Medina, and they started looting. They did not allow people to leave their homes. Now, what happened after the assassination of Uthman radiallahu anhu? After that, all eyes were on Ali radiallahu anhu to take over. And he initially hesitated, he showed some reluctance, but because the crowds insisted, he agreed only if the announcement and pledge was done in front of the entire public. Okay? So now, Karbala. What happens? The assassination of Uthman radiallahu anhu was the first chapter of what is known as the first fitna, the first crisis in the ummah. Okay? Because when people started to find out that Uthman radiallahu anhu was assassinated, the first thing that Ali radiallahu anhu, the first task that he was pressured, that people put pressure on him to tend to, was to avenge the death of Uthman radiallahu anhu. Okay? And we're going to talk about that as we move forward, which was a huge deal. Obviously, not only was he Uthman radiallahu anhu, not only was he the son-in-law, he was also Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was the Khalifa. So those people who were responsible for his murder, they need to be taken to task. But Ali radiallahu anhu's wisdom was that Medina is surrounded. They still have a stronghold. How can we take them to task now? Right? The ummah was starting to get divided. All these rebellions. Ali radiallahu anhu's most important priority was getting the ummah, establishing stability and getting control over the entire ummah first, before getting behind those people who were responsible for Uthman radiallahu anhu's death, who, by the way, were still in and around Medina. And that led to the battle of Jamal, and then that further led to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, who was the governor in Syria. Okay, I'll expand on that later. He was obviously the cousin of Uthman radiallahu anhu. He had the right, as being a family member, it was his right to seek revenge and avenge the death of his cousin Uthman radiallahu anhu. So he said that if you're not going to go after Uthman's killers, me and my people, we're not going to accept your khilafah until you do that. It wasn't a power struggle. They just wanted his death to be addressed, because then that's going to set a precedence. Like, okay, anyone can murder a khalifa and get away with it. We're not going to let them get away with it. We're going to avenge this, and we want it now. So this is what caused the friction, and then some years later, 30 years later, it leads to, all of these things feed into the massacre of Karbala. Anyways, inshallah, we'll cover that as we move forward. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi.